here in Sacramento, we're moving along. We're really making some good progress. We want at this, especially at this national conference, to provide opportunities to students. Okay, we're wanting our members to be present, but in particular we're trying to attract more and more students to attend. And the way we're hoping that this can be accomplished is make it easy to find lodging that's inexpensive. Make it easy to come on board and pay the fee and be here. We want to especially bring students in contact with potential companies that could employ them at some point. Anna Marie, did you want to say something?
No, I was actually trying to, do we have the information on what it costs for students to attend?
Not right now. That's something that Kathy's off the line now, but Jim, she and I will be talking about that and trying to come up with the best package we can.
Okay.
We're going to be inviting a lot of mid-level operational people from cities, from counties, from the state, from the feds, like Bureau of Reclamation, Corps of Engineers, sanitation districts, water districts. We want to attract all these people. We're talking about climate change and our response to it, the resiliency that we want to have to as these changes happen. And most certainly in California, we have extreme conditions that are developed here on a normal basis, let alone with climate change happening. So these same people will be at some point looking for earth science people, professionals. And that's why, go ahead.
Steve, what is the date for the national conference?
The national conference date is October 23rd through October 26th, which is a Tuesday.
Right.
And all of these days are important days, but we have created, we're in process of creating something very, very unique and special. It's a climate change roundtable panel discussion with some high-level people. I'm hoping we can even have the Federal Reserve present. I have a panel of 10 that I'm developing, and we will be talking about how, what is California doing to prepare for 2040? Exactly what are they doing? And how does insurance and land planning and economy enter into this? How does the concerns related to water and disadvantaged communities and energy and so forth? So it'll be a very interesting hour and a half, and we'll be inviting the media. As we're being very broad in who we're inviting as far as the media goes. So I expect that to be quite good, and that's on Monday, the 25th. That is probably one of the most important days. Now, for you students, Saturday is important because it's basically student day. Our early career professionals are putting together, they've been doing this last several years, specific sessions during that day, during Saturday, for you to both meet people and talk over different pieces of getting, what it's like when you get out. It's not like you're in prison, but once you graduate, what's that going to be like, and give you some good messaging, some things that you want to remember. So you definitely want to attend that on Saturday. And then on Monday is our plenary. We're going to have a state geologist speaking. And then after that, very short break. And then we're going to have the climate change climate change roundtable discussion, the panel discussion with 10 different individuals, and then followed by lunch. And then we'll have some sessions in the afternoon. So it's going to be a really important day. I think the poster sessions also will be during that day. So all these things will be giving you guys all kinds of exposure. I didn't have that. I think most of the older men and women here with us tonight didn't have these opportunities. And because of that, we know how important it is. We are having these opportunities developed for you guys. So take advantage of it. Get the word out. I want to see at least 100 people, 100 students in attendance on Monday. Okay, that's the goal out there. Now we have many different universities to pick from. And so I'm hoping to do that, as well as I'm hoping to see at least 120 people who are members of AIPG already attending. It's not too far off from what we usually do. And then I would like to also see if we can attract 150 to 250 people within the California's world of the various operations, that we have at all these different levels. So we really are striving for a high attendance. Whether or not we achieve it, we will see, but we're giving it the best we have to have that happen. But for students, this is a huge opportunity in just a few days to meet a lot of people. You make some business cards with your name on it before, so that you can always share a business card and get the other person's card, and start your networking from now. It's important to do that. Poster sessions, that's going to be something for students. Let's see. And of course, there are field trips, and probably the least expensive way to get involved in the field trips might be that we usually have at least one volunteer per bus. Now, I don't know, because of COVID, how that's going to work, but if you want to go on a field trip, there will be field trips both Saturday and Sunday. And so everybody listening tonight can look at the last TPG magazine and read about each of the different field trips that are available. And then for those of you who have interest, we have 4 mini workshops. First time we've tried this, where we want to give you meat and potatoes on how to do stuff, so that once you attend this 2 or 3 hour session, you literally could go out the very next day. You will have the tooling and the knowledge to find other information to begin, for example, using a drone. One of the workshops is on the use of drones, where you get it, how you get a pilot's license, all that stuff. There's another one is on PFASs. And then there's one that our very own Jim Jacobs, who is sitting here right now, has co-authored a book on fracking. So the authors will be available to answer all kinds of questions. And my guess is we probably will have a mixed crowd of those who are pro and those who are not pro well fracking. And so that should be a very lively and interesting workshop. It's the angle, the slant is, what are the environmental concerns? People talk about it, but what really are? Let's look at the details and not speculate, not have the fairy tales. So that's what that would be all about. And then let's see, the last, I can't remember. There is one more. Oh yeah, it's on preparations for wildfires, and it's a very hot topic out in the West, and it's related to climate change. And of course, the consequences of wildfires are great when it comes to our watersheds and our infrastructure that gets burnt up through the process. So anyhow, that will be a very interesting workshop as well. There are specific requirements for preparing for wildfires out here in California, and so we're hoping to capture that information within that very short period of time, that workshop. So the workshops are designed for everybody to learn the nuts and bolts. We don't care so much about the theoretical aspects of it, the history of it. We want to know how to do certain tasks. And so those things would be discussed, and through conversation, you can, of course, embellish on each of those things. So that's what we have going right now on our annual conference. So I hope I'm lighting a fire underneath every single person's rear end right now, because it's going to be a very worthwhile national conference to attend this year. So I encourage that. Fleetwood, and how are you today? You're stuck on my screen.
Fleet.
He's muted.
Yeah, he's muted. Anyhow, I just want to welcome you here. Okay, so I am looking on the screen for, and he's not here. Okay. We had Mark Rogers, who was going to talk a little bit about how to use LinkedIn. Mark,
I'm here, Steve.
Are you here? I can't see on the screen.
Yep, on my video.
Oh, okay, I see you. I see you. I've never met you face to face. So you're only a voice on the phone. I envisioned somebody who was very burly, big beard, and all that he waxed. Anyhow, I'm going to throw it over to you because we usually do a little practice session at these meetings. I thought today we do it a little bit different. Mark's going to talk about LinkedIn. So let me, 5-10 minutes, go for it.
All right. Well, I wanted to let everybody know that LinkedIn's social media platform is really great for the students coming out of college. You can use the Job Center. That's a function on LinkedIn to actually look at specific regions that you're interested in working in, specific companies you're interested in working for, or specific areas of expertise that you want to leverage with regards to your education and where there might be an entry-level position advertised. And so the last 2 jobs I had were through LinkedIn, and I want to encourage everybody, if they haven't already, to register with LinkedIn and start networking, because networking with LinkedIn is a really huge way to get your name out there and to get a resume out in front of potential employers. And so you can post a lot of different stuff on your profile with regards to letters of recommendation from your teachers, your professors, any kind of school projects that may have relevancy towards getting a job in the future, or even as an intern. And so I was just going to offer up a couple things that I highly recommend you do with LinkedIn. One was the Job Center. 2 was to definitely look for intern positions or entry-level positions that are advertised. And then a lot of these positions will list hiring managers and HR personnel that you typically wouldn't see in a website like Indeed. So by being able to network before you even apply for the job.
Mark, we lost you.
Bandwidth, there he is.
There, you're back again. We missed the last 5 seconds.
All right. So I was just going to mention that that there are hiring managers and HR personnel listed with each advertisement for LinkedIn, and that allows you to network before you even apply for the position. So it's your foot in the door with the process, which allows you to do your thing with regards to networking with the company personnel that you're interested in working for. And a lot of times they will tell you over the phone or via email what they're looking for. And so you can customize your resumes to fit that position more so than your competition could if they were applying blind over an Indeed feed. So those are some of the tools that you can put in your toolbox going forward to the national meeting. Get your picture up there on LinkedIn. Start getting your name out in front of these companies you want to be interested in hiring with. And a lot of these companies may be at the meeting this fall. So this is sort of your running start towards getting a job, either as an intern or as an entry-level position coming out of school. And so these kind of tools are very invaluable for you. And I will be up in Sacramento in October leading several of the sessions, the drone workshop. I'll be leading the coastal resiliency and clean energy sessions, as well as the wildfire workshop. So I will be up there to answer any questions you may have on networking with LinkedIn. Back to you, Steve.
Okay, Mark, we should also say that maybe the workflow for these students at the national conference would be to get as many cards as possible. And then when you get those cards and later on you're in front of your computer with LinkedIn on, you ask to be a friend. Basically, you get on LinkedIn and ask that they be a part of your network. That way you'll be hooked into them, because eventually you forget these names. And then you can revisit those people every so often when you need to and see what's going on, and even have some conversations via LinkedIn with them. Would you suggest that? Would that be a good way to take this into beyond even the national conference?
Oh yeah, most definitely. I post probably 5 or 6 blogs a day on LinkedIn related to the work that I do with Weston. And so it's a great way for you to get your name known and continue those networking relationships with companies that you want to work for. And it's always good to keep active with the social media platform as a way to grow professionally, because there's a lot of great articles and blogs on there that can help you professionally.
Okay, thanks, Mark. You guys, students have any questions, ask Mark. You know, now's be a good time. Okay,
How about us old guys, Mark?
yeah, Don, wait, ask away.
What do you think of this mindlife.org, Brian McCann? I think he contacted me through LinkedIn.
So your question again was what again?
What do you think of this company or this referencing company called mindlife.org?
Wow.
Brian McCann. He's out of Virginia. He seems pretty competent, and he's been able to steer me to a couple of spots.
So Mind Life, is that like a technical, is that like a recruiter?
Yeah, it is. They're headhunters.
Yeah.
Mindlife.org,
Okay.
they're headhunters.
Yeah. There's a number of headhunters that will be troll. I don't want to use the word trolling too actively here, but they do use LinkedIn pretty aggressively.
Yeah.
So I pay the premium when I joined LinkedIn, so I can actually see people who look at my profiles. And so that might be something you might want to look at if you haven't already, is whenever recruiters look at your profile on LinkedIn, it'll pop up as a recruiter, but it won't depending on how they're registered with the media site, it'll either mention their name and their company, or just they're a recruiter and they're anonymous. So it depends on how they register.
Yeah, he was name and company. Yeah.
Okay, so I would say if you're interested in networking with them, a lot of these recruiters will give you leads on work in your field, and or they'll ask you for people that are looking for specific positions and stuff. So I deal with recruiters a lot in the regards to helping them out if I know somebody's looking for a job.
Right.
And so it's a pretty valuable tool that way. And a lot of it comes from, obviously knowing the person and providing recommendations on their skill set, but also just being able to be aware of the job market as a whole. A lot of these recruiters will give you a good feel for that.
Yeah, I agree. It's good for consulting.
Oh, yes.
Okay, Mark, there's a question. How can these students get a hold of you on LinkedIn? What's the easiest way?
You can just search Mark Rogers on the LinkedIn search bar, and I'm employed right now through Weston Solutions. So there'll be a few Mark Rogers that'll pop up in this, and it's spelled with ROGERS, and look under Weston, and just ask to be connected, and I'll be sure and look for those connect requests. And then I have a fairly large network. I have probably maybe close to 15,000 connections on my network. And so that alone, getting connected to my network will really help you see a lot of employers that way. So I'll be happy to help you out wherever I can.
All right, great. Mark, thanks a bunch. Any other questions, anybody that you have for Mark? Okay, before we have Matt come forward, I have one more thing, and I'm going to direct my attention now to Laxman in India. Laxman, can you turn your mic back on?
Yes, sir.
Thank you. Okay, you're back. I wanted to throw a couple questions at you. If you could please take these questions to VJ and some of the others there, some of the professors, and talk them over. We are hoping that there will be some attendance from India at our conference. So maybe you can take that question back to the professors and ask if anybody's considering attending, flying out to Sacramento later this year. The second question that we have is, or an opportunity really is, are there any students that have a desire to participate in our poster session? If so, just reach out to me, at least for now, and give me their names and their email so I can get a hold of them. And then I will direct traffic so that you know what the next steps are. Okay, but do let me know. We need to start thinking about these things from now. And then thirdly, let's see. Well, actually, those are the two main questions. Laxman, do you have any questions?
No, sir. No, sir. I will discuss with sir and I will tell you what was decision.
Okay, very good. And we don't know what our capacity is, but we are hoping, this is a hope right now. It's not definitive. We don't know for sure, but we would like to fund one student to come here. It depends on a lot, but anyhow, we need to work on that on our end first, but our hope is that we can do that. And as we hopefully find that we in fact can, we will get a hold of you and decide on how to pick the student. Okay, so let everybody know that we are looking at that as a possibility. Okay.
Okay.
Okay, Laxman, thanks for coming on board here. You must look at Facebook a lot because I sent you this invitation on Facebook this morning. Okay.
I see
go ahead.
that. I've seen on Facebook.
Yes. Yeah, that's where I saw you also. Well, thank you for being here, Laxman. Is there anybody else that would like to ask any questions to Laxman in India? Okay, then Anna Marie, or
Sorry, I have
go
a
ahead.
question. I was just wondering what he's doing in India and like, yeah.
Okay, hey Laxman, can you share with us what you're doing in India right now in school or otherwise?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. I'm a PhD student. I'm doing my PhD in geochemistry.
Geochemistry PhD student, okay.
Oh.
And what is your specialty? What is it that you're focusing on?
I am focusing on spatial and temporal evolution of the mantle and the continental crust by using huge databases which are available, and I am studying the evolution of crust and mantle.
Okay, I wasn't quite getting. Jim, did you get all that? Your mic's off, Jim. Turn your mic on.
He said he was looking at the evolution of crustal rocks and looking at the continental crust and the mantle.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Very
Did you
good.
hear that?
Yes. Okay. Thanks, Jim. That was good. Is it Sayuri? Did you want to continue with any more questions?
No, I was just curious about what he was studying, but that sounds really interesting. Thank you.
Okay, great. All right. Well, who would like to introduce our speaker today? Okay, because I can do it. Very, very short, and in fact, very, very short and sweet, because I know Matt has a lot to talk about. Matt, he's one of a kind, and he has been involved in many different aspects of geology. For quite some time, he had been very active in the oil and gas patch in the business, and has done a lot of mining, and eventually migrated towards the environmental things. So he will be sharing with you some of the situations that really taught him some wisdom and taught him to be good on his feet as far as getting work and being successful and networking and really all the important relationships that you want to strive to develop in your own pursuit of a profession that's successful. So Matt, you take it away, and you can always throw back to Jim or I, anything or anyone else here at whatever time you want. We'll have questions and answers after Matt is finished. Matt, it's all yours.
Steve, before Matt goes on, could I offer a little more of an introduction? I've known
Yes.
Matt for a while. I worked with him at Worley Parsons. So we were consultants together. And I've known Matt for, as I said, a long time. I think the interesting thing for this meeting is that he has a very diverse career. He was a state geologist for New Mexico. He's worked in consulting. I know he's done a lot of mining work. So he's one of a kind, really, in terms of multi-disciplinary for geology, environmental, petroleum, mining. I just really think highly of him. And I think that one of his most important skills is his ability to communicate effectively. You know, a lot of people have technical skills, but he's really very good at communicating with clients and colleagues. And that's, I think, you know, if I were to suggest a skill for students to really focus on now that they've got their technical basis, is really trying to improve or learn how to better communicate with people and really be effective in that. And I think that's something Matt really brings to the table. So I just wanted to offer that.
Well, thank you, Ed. That is great. You guys have really been pretty close in the past, professionally and probably personally. Ed, you and I need to talk sometime about being a speaker, by the way.
I'd love to.
Let's stay
yeah.
Okay,
Thank
Matt, hey, it's all yours.
Well, thanks for that endorsement, Ed. The check is in the mail. Yeah, well, you know, I talked this over with both Steve and Jim about this presentation, and one thing that I wasn't too keen on is just yet another some old bald guy who talks about how they did things back in the day, and if you're 10 years or less of experience, it'll just make your eyes roll back in your head and like, what does this mean to me? And I specifically want to kind of tailor this to people who are very young professionals, maybe not even out of school yet, who are going to be job hunting, who will come along the curve. And I'd like to translate this into really lessons learned along the way. If I can save you some time and anxiety and heartache and whatever along the way, based on my experiences, I'm only glad to do that. And I think that's the mission here. It's not just to give you a recitation of my resume, but we got to start somewhere. And I won't tell you the year I graduated, because that would immediately make your eyes roll back. But I suffice it to say that shortly after the continental ice sheets retreated, the university sprang up, and I went to one in the Midwest. So shortly after that, I got my bachelor's at the University of Missouri, and that's the correct pronunciation of that state, and went on to Washington State University in Pullman to get my master's, and I got a master's in structural geology. But in between that time, I worked 2 years in seismic exploration, and oddly enough, right out in your neck of the woods, because my first assignment was in Lodi, California. And I lived right outside of Lodi in the little community of Terminus, right in the Delta, elevation 7 feet. And we shot seismic out there all the way down the valley. We worked Lodi, the Stockton Arch, Modesto, Merced, Tulare, Avenal Cutoff, Kettleman Hills, Shafter, Taft, Tule Lake. I lived for a little while out in Oildale, just north down in Kern County. Got a lot of really good experience, a lot of real world practical experience, and managed to parlay that into one winter up on the North Slope, working right next to Prudhoe Bay and Harrison Bay out on the shelf ice for 3 months one winter. And it was just tremendous experience. I mean, it's just really, really fun stuff. I decided I wanted to go into oil and gas, so I did a structural thesis on a folded thrust belt up in Montana. And that's when there was a lot of emphasis in the fold and thrust belt in the western Wyoming, out Anschutz Ranch out there, when they were drilling the Paris thrust, the Willard thrust, the Darby thrust, and lots and lots of interest in that. Well, I got my master's degree, moved to Denver to go into the oil and gas business, just as the oil and gas business was going right off of a cliff. And I tell people that I was trying to get interviews with people that are getting laid off at the end of the week, and it put me way, way down in the pecking order. So the pragmatic approach is I ended up becoming a well site geologist and mud logging out on oil wells for 2 years. And that is a young person's game. It's a very high energy, 12-hour shift, 7 days a week for endless. The time just keeps marching on in perpetuity until they TD the well and you're out of there. But I got a good experience. Did a couple up in the overthrust in the Powder River Basin, up in the Williston Basin, down in the DJ, Permian Basin as well, the San Juan Basin. I learned more about drilling and drilling dynamics and how to lose a hole, how to win a hole, how to bring them in, drill stem tests and all that. Just, it was, for me, it was fascinating, but it's draining. But it was fun. I learned a lot about gas chromatography and monitoring well gas and logging the hole and the chips and UV fluorescence for oil cuts and all that. So I did learn a lot. Whether I ever use it again remained to be demonstrated, but it was a good experience. But you're never home, and so that was one of those things that I wanted to have a job that was somehow centrally based. And the only corner of the economy that was hiring geologists was environmental consulting. And so I managed to somehow get lucky and landed a position with a company that was based out of Marin County, Novato, California, Harding Lawson Associates. And they had just opened up an office in Denver. They had some really big projects there. They were sub to a bunch of much bigger consulting firms, but I found myself in the environmental business and worked out the Rocky Mountain Arsenal, which was a world-class Superfund site, enormous, big, and a bunch of really kind of high-profile projects up and down the Colorado Front Range and really all over the U.S. But great experience, and I was so fortunate to have worked with some really fantastic, exceptionally bright people. I just and to this day, I've got very good friendships with those guys and gals. I worked for a very accomplished woman the first 5 years that I was there, and I learned an awful lot from her. Extremely capable. But I owe a lot of it to a lot of my whatever modicum of success I've been able to enjoy has been attributable to really, really capable people I got to work with, and the friendships I formed very early on, including the people I shared an office with in grad school. I still talk to them on an ongoing basis. So that was a lot of fun, and I learned an awful lot and got to work on some really, really cool stuff. What I focused on at that time was chlorinated solvents, contaminated groundwater, and aquifer testing. And as an undergrad, I had one groundwater class, and now I'm selling myself after graduate school with a master's thesis in structural as a hydrogeologist. So I took a bunch of additional coursework and really got down and honed my skills on aquifer testing and doing, not just simple slug tests, but step drawdown tests and constant Q tests where you take things out 3 or 4 log cycles and Packard tests and straddle Packard tests and some really cool stuff. And some of it really low flow. Some of it we did some. Ed and I did one out in the Mojave that was 1,200 GPM. So big test with big diesel-driven engines and all that. But real diversified experience. And so that was a wonderful thing. And I kind of morphed out of environmental by way of groundwater, in that I had some clients who were mining clients who were looking to dewater an area or develop water resources in another area. And so you find you're doing groundwater for mining companies, and you got a lot of diversity there in terms of exposure. Did a lot of copper stuff down in Arizona, did some stuff copper related right outside of Salt Lake, and then acquired a lot of experience up in Canada and down in Mexico and South America. A lot of silver districts down in Mexico, either dewatering or finding water for them. And a lot of stuff with the copper, the big porphyry copper systems down in Chile, but also the gold, the Maricunga district in Chile. But I got to work down in Santiago, Copiapó, Calama, those places in Chile, but a lot of work in Peru that was mining related. We worked on a regulating reservoir down there, water for that. Got to do some work in Ecuador. And so just really diversified experiences. And when I was in Santiago, I worked with a real multinational group. I signed on with a consulting company that asked me to go down there for at least 2 months. I ended up being down there for 8 months. And I could have never done this if I had kids at home. I mean, there's no way. But I was an empty nester by then, and they just wanted to make sure the checks were still going to show up at the dorm room, you know. So that's all they needed to see from me. But really good experience down there, and multinational paper. I worked with a lot of Germans and Brits and Kiwis and Aussies and people from France. Literally a real multinational group, and fantastic exposure down there. I really learned a lot. I learned an awful lot. I'd go back in a nanosecond. And I got a interesting exposure in 2010 when I was in Santiago, is when that big earthquake hit. That it was 8.8 out on the coast, and by the time it hit Santiago, it was 8.4, and it just rocked that country. And then I'd never been in an earthquake before, so that was a real eye opener. That was in 2010, and I didn't even know if it was a big one or a small one because I'd never been in one before. But I found out that one happened to have been very, very big. And they pretty much shut down the country for a week, and so had to worry about whether my refrigerator would be able to have any access for the foreseeable future. But I've been fortunate in that I've been able to work for relatively small consulting companies as well as very, very large companies. And I can't advise one model over another because I'm my own independent consultant now. But and they'll argue whether it's, you know, the best thing if they're publicly traded, or the best thing if they're privately held, or they're employee owned, or what have you. And all of them have their pros and cons. But the nice thing, and this is what Ed was talking about a minute ago, the nice thing about working for big companies is they have the ability to take down huge projects. And I worked on one down in Bogota that I was down there for about half a year, off and on, not continuously, but where we were developing a big open pit coal mine. And we were working with world-class people on dewatering the operation. They were going to put in train lines. They call it a pit to port facility in the Cerrejón coal, where they would put it on rail unit trains. They would have 3 unit trains running 24/7 and take it to a port facility and ship it around the coast on the Atlantic side, the coast of Brazil. I would have never gotten any kind of exposure to rail operations or materials handling and regenerative conveyor systems and all this other stuff that it just leaves your head spinning, the stuff that you learn in the process of doing that. But it was really, really cool. And I was with the whole team of Aussies on that. And Aussies like to work hard and they like to play hard. And I think they would say the same of people from the US as well, that generally the people from Australia like folks from the US. And vice versa. But it was good to have that kind of multinational exposure. I wouldn't have gotten that in Denver, you know. And I was in Denver for 36 years. Just moved to Kansas City a couple of years ago because this is my hometown, for family reasons primarily. But you know, they say your network is your net worth, and my whole network is out west. And so I'm constantly on the phone to people in Denver, if not Nevada, California, Utah, and that's every day. And to echo Mark's sentiment about LinkedIn, I'm on LinkedIn every day. I've learned so much stuff from other people on LinkedIn. If I want to know more, I just contact them like, can you explain that to me? You know, stuff like that. So I would advise all of you to be on it and be active on it and keep it professional. I never any kind of negative, snarky stuff or any of that. I steer clear of all that. But it's net, I think it's a positive thing. And the webinars that have come out free of charge of high quality talks. All you got to do is sign up, and some world-class individual is going to chew your ear off for an hour and a half, and it's free. And if you're not available for that time frame, they'll have an encore performance of it a week later when it is easy to log on, you know. And the learning opportunities are just really unparalleled. So that I echo his sentiment on LinkedIn. But I had, based on lessons learned, I scribbled down some notes of the stuff that I've done and the stuff that I've kind of learned along the way, because working in seismic exploration, then working on oil wells and mud logging, doing that work, and drifting into environmental, then into water resources, then to mining. It's like I've come full circle. And I saw that Larry Cirillo had been on this call earlier. Larry's a geologist, but he once commented, he goes, "What are you doing now? And where are you working?" And he'd say, you change jobs about as often as people change socks. And that, it would seem that way as an independent consultant, because a lot of that was, it certainly was going on. But if somebody was accuse me of being a jack of all trades but a master of none, I would not argue with them, because somebody who's been in groundwater their entire career is going to know a lot more about groundwater than I will, or been in oil and gas their entire career, or mining for that matter. But the one thing that always brings me back to all of them, and the kind of unifying thing, at least to my way of thinking, is structural geology, because I'm really passionate about that, and I've only earned a few paychecks in structural geology, but it just really trips my trigger, and I find it endlessly fascinating. But I want to harken back to the comment I made earlier about people I went to school with. I had dinner a couple of weeks ago with two individuals who are very highly accomplished professionals, nationally known, nationally recognized, uber capable, and both of them admitted over dinner, both of them had flunked their initial Geology 101 classes. And they just laughed about it, like, and these are both of them PhDs, they're nationally known, and they were too young, too immature, they partied too hard, they did whatever, first time being away from mom and dad, what have you. And so the net, both of them were older than me, but net, the point they were making is they're human too. And that's what happens. And then they just kind of had to buckle down and get with the program. And it proves that a lot of us are very similar in many, many ways. But it was kind of curious that to hear these two guys, these guys said, "My first geology class, I flunked it. I didn't even finish it." The other guy said, "Yeah, me too." I was kind of surprised. I got a good working man's B in my first class. But interestingly enough, I've told people that this before. I came from a very large family, and there was no money for school. And I started out at junior college, and that's where I took my first geology classes. I was going to be a biology major. I'd taken all these other biology classes, took a geology class, and the geology in Missouri is not fascinating, trust me. But the professor was really into it, and he ran these trips out to Colorado every summer. And hey, if you want to go, you can get an extra 4 credit hours or something. I'm like, yeah, I'd like to do that. And it was fascinating. Colorado's got great geology. So at any rate, I did it two summers in a row, and I decided, maybe I'm going to look into this more. And that's kind of the nature of geology and geology students is we never see geologists as students who walk onto the campus wanting to be a geology student and be a geology major, because they've almost never run into it in high school. You might take an AP environmental sciences class, but you'll never take an AP geology class. They're not offered. And so that's something we're working on as a group in AIPG. But in terms of maintaining your network, I do believe that, and it's not to be the go-getter. I think you'll give yourself a whole lot more personal professional credit if you're much more the go-giver. You're the person who is reliable to help out folks and a good solid team member, et cetera, et cetera. People remember that, and they remember that for the long haul. And you'll remember the people you went to school with, for better or for worse, as well as the professors. And so it's a very positive thing, because there's a very low likelihood that you will ever go to work for one of your friends or with one of your friends. That's a very low likelihood. There is a very high likelihood that you will go to work for somebody that one of your friends knows, who will refer you. And it happens every day of the week. you get into it, and they'll say, oh, I know this woman over at such and such. She knows about isotopic blah, 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 blah. And you get a phone call right out of the blue. It happens every day. And so to the extent that you can be, you know, if you want to have good friends, you got to be a good friend. But if you want to have a lot of professional associates and professional colleagues, you have to reciprocate in kind. And that's simple. It's a very simple lesson, but it has, oh my gosh, it's for me, I'm blessed to have so many very good friends and people who are so capable that I get calls out of the blue that so-and-so said to give me a call, and like, what? They did? So that it does happen. It happens all the time. The other thing is about developing your career as you're coming out of school. I mean, what does it really mean? You know, develop your career. Like, how do you do that? Well, you do a good job and you get paid for your 40 hours a week, but you fulfill all your assignments. But you really have to work at it, and it doesn't stop when you get your degree. And the reason I tell you this is whether you're getting a bachelor's or a master's right now or just got one recently, if you don't work on your career and grow your skill set, and by growing your skill set, you're actually growing your personal value proposition, who you are and what you bring to the table. If you're doing the same thing year over year over year, you're actually falling behind, because the industry is growing, technology is growing. And if you're stuck in something like, man, I'm just on the hamster track, then you have to personally and professionally work at getting off of that. Well, how do you do that? Well, you network, you belong to professional societies, you attend as many webinars as you can, you take advantage of all the freebies that are out there. But I've heard it put up before that if you really want to work on your career, and I've heard this argument before, people won't go to a conference or they won't go to a seminar, or they won't do this and this because their company's not paying for it. Well, I can already tell you who's responsible for your career, and that would be you, not your company. What they would like to get is the maximum amount of billability and productivity out of you. That's an honest proposition because they're paying you for it. But if you want to grow in an additional dimension or grow additional capabilities that are above and beyond what you're doing right now, that's on you. And so it's incumbent upon you to pony up out of your own pocket to go to that conference, to take that short course, to sign up for the webinar series or whatever. And if you got to go to Oklahoma to do that, or you got to go to Tonganoxie to do that, you go to Tonganoxie and you do it. And a lot of people say, I don't want to take vacation time for that. I understand that. Then maybe you could eat some time and do it on your own time. Say, you know what, I'll take a week without pay and go do that. You are the one who will benefit from that. Your family will benefit from that, et cetera, et cetera. And I really do believe that there are those who argue that you should be putting about 5% of your income into your career. So if you're making $50K a year, that's $2,500. Okay, $2,500, that'll get you a pretty good conference. That'll get you a lot of show and tell, a lot of good relationships, a lot of being out there as a professional. That's not a lot. If you're making $100K a year, that's $5,000. That will get you a lot of exposure and a lot of traction, and that's year over year. And that will help you to differentiate who you are, what you do, what you bring to the table, and amp up and ramp up your value proposition. Because if you don't do that, it's really easy to get into that quote unquote technician track. You'll be the sampling person. You'll be the instrument person. You'll be on this kind of flat track for longer than you'll be comfortable. But not if you play a heads up game and stay with it and stay after it and grow yourself personally, grow your own skill set. A lot of this is, I'll give you a classic example. I really thought I knew Microsoft Office. I knew it really, really well. Until I asked my son a couple of simple questions about Excel. Oh my God, the kid's an Excel guru, and he's Python. He does all this other stuff, but oh my gosh, I didn't know what I didn't know, and I got some very good exposure there. But also, everybody in geosciences today, I'll give you a kind of a tired example, and this comes from my own education. I took a class as an undergrad in cartography. And it isn't what you think cartography is today. It was literally drawing maps and inking with the Leroy set on vellum or mylar and handing in these very carefully drafted sheets of mylar to be graded. Well, forget about that. And we use plain table and validate. Forget about that. That's all past tense. Everything we do today is mapping, and you've got to know GIS. And I don't care whether you're a geochemist, geophysicist, paleontologist, you name it, you've got to know GIS. And not just kinda or sorta, like I knew Excel. You've got to be embedded in it. You've got to be in your organization the go-to person for GIS. I really do believe that. And if you can possibly become a GISP, which means you take not just the one class in GIS that just about everybody has to take as an undergrad, you take the 4 classes to get the certification. That just gives you so much more professional credibility and leverage, because so many different software packages, whether it's ModFlow or Leapfrog or Vulkan or whatever, tie right into ArcGIS. And ESRI, they want your demographic, they want you using their software. They would practically pay you to use their software as a student. It's free to students. But even for me, it's only $100 a year for the license to work with the desktop. I can't do a whole lot with it, but I don't need to do a whole lot. I just need to be able to see them, manipulate them a little bit, and work with it. But GIS, facility, functionality, fully functional in GIS, you have to be. You really have to be. And those skills aren't going to lessen, not at all. They're going to, if anything, they're only going to increase. The other thing is, we talked about networking, skill set development. The demographic of people today, professionals in the sciences, 30 years and younger, is they're not really joiners. They don't join professional groups. They get everything off the internet. They get that's where they find it. You know, you want to know something, just Google it up or find it on Wikipedia, and that's where the answers are. But that's not a depth of understanding. In terms of developing your own professional credentials and credibility, you really do have to get certified, and you really have to get registered, and you really, really have to pass the ASBOG test, ASBOG, the Association of State Boards of Geologists. You got to take that test. You have to pass it. They administer it to Sacramento twice a year. I took it in Sacramento. I took the California specific exam. The test is not that hard. It's not that hard. I promise you that test is not that hard. There aren't trick questions in there. However, the test is impossible to pass if you are not prepared. And it takes, I would say, at a minimum, really about 90 days to really hunker down and put some energy into it. And they give you all kinds of, on their candidate website, all kinds of test questions and example tests and everything you could possibly want to prepare for that, other than the gray matter between your ears, preparing for it, and the will to prepare. You can't cram for it. You absolutely cannot cram for it. The other thing that I would advise is I have this handy little book, the Geoscience Handbook, that's put out by AGI. And it's not cheap. It's gotten more and more expensive over the years. It's like 50 or 60 bucks. If you're going to have a career in geosciences, you have to have this book. You have to have this book. Just like their geology dictionary. This really isn't optional. And this is, I would almost say, this is the only book you need to study to pass the test. I would almost say that. But if you got a whole stack of textbooks, those will help you as well. But you got to have this. And so you need to take that test. All the states have reciprocity with each other. So if you get it in Nebraska or Utah or Kansas or Arizona, they all have reciprocity except California. California, because of the seismicity and the environmental regulations, they have their own state exam, which is also easy. I passed it twice, and the only reason I passed it twice is I let my license lapse for 10 years when I was working out there and then not working for a long period of time. When I went to reinstate it, I had to take the exam again, which was just last October 8th. I took it. It's not that hard. And whether you're going to go into mining or you're going to go into environmental or whatever direction your career takes, you're going to have to get some kind of, if you're going into environmental, you'll have to get your, they call it HAZWOPER, but it's the 40-hour health and safety training for OSHA. And everybody wants you to have that before you even show up, because your employers don't want to pay for that. They don't want to pay for a full week for you to sit in the class. A lot of schools now are offering it as part of their curriculum, that you can actually take the health and safety, that HAZWOPER, the OSHA training, as part of your coursework. I say a lot that I might be misspeaking there, but some of them do. If you're going to go into mining, you have to take the 24-hour new miner tests. And then every year for both OSHA, and that's called MSHA, the mining piece. And then every year you have to take the 8-hour refresher. Some of those are free, and almost, well, they're all now virtual. I just took the MSHA for Nevada last week. That's 8 hours of this, 8 hours of Zoom. But that's how they do it now, rather than classroom. I think you can take it in Carson City in the classroom, but that's how they're doing those now. But a couple of things on where things are going industry-wise and what things are coming up on the horizon. Steve had mentioned, and we'll do environmental first. Steve had mentioned PFAS, PFAS. It's 8,000 different species of fluorinated compounds, those that have fluorine in their matrix. They're long chain polymers, and depending on how many fluorine ions are attached to that, it depends on the properties of that element. Here's the problem with PFAS, is it's what chlorinated solvents were to me 25 years ago. You can make your entire career in PFAS. They're ubiquitous. They're absolutely everywhere. The reason is they go into stain guarding materials. They go on either side of the burger wrapper when you go to Burger King, because it repels both water and oil. It's the stain guard on your carpeting. It's the waterproofing in your Gore-Tex. It's absolutely everywhere. The problem with it is it bioaccumulates. It goes up through the food chain. It's nasty, toxic, and they're measuring down to the PPT level, which means the analytical costs are going to go through the roof. It's going to become as we speak, it's becoming a very large economic driver, and big out in California, and it's big everywhere. Michigan, New Jersey, Minnesota. It's only going to get that much bigger. Sampling parameters are very different than they were with chlorinated solvents. And because they're measuring it down to the PPT level because of its toxicity, it's just, I don't know, there's going to be so much more of that. Very big at military sites. And what people most identify it with is they call FFFF, the 4 Fs, fixed film firefighting foam. And it's the foam that they use at airports, when they foam a big plane wreck or a big accident, when they foam that stuff down, as that stuff breaks down physically and goes into the watershed, the drainage, or what have you, it doesn't break down chemically. It's extremely persistent. And so by virtue of its bioaccumulation and toxicity, it's a bad actor, and it's found in almost every landfill in the country. Every solid waste facility is a big PFAS generator. And a lot of municipalities, when they take the solids out of their wastewater treatment plant, they thin spread that all over farmland. Now, a lot of farmers won't take that because it's got PFAS in it. It's a huge deal. It's not going away. And so the more and more, if you're going to go into environmental, PFAS could depending on how you're going to go into environmental, soil, groundwater, what have you, the PFAS conversation is going to get mega mondo. Apart from that, the nice thing about it is in environmental sciences, they're finally listening to geologists because they haven't for a long time. And now conceptual site models and very robust, three-dimensionally modeled project areas have become critically important. And so your science skills come to the fore because you got to mesh your subsurface geology with your hydrogeology and your soil science and your geochemistry, and all of it comes together, and it has to move through time. And that's gotten really, really cool. And what's driving this now is what they call HRSC, high resolution site characterization work. This is where the whole industry has been stood on its head and turned upside down. When I say it really rewards the inquiring mind. If you want to know what's going on in the subsurface at your site, do you want to find out over the next 5 years, or you want to find out over the next 5 months or 5 weeks? By virtue of, you can mobilize a lab on site, have a couple of geochemists sitting in the lab, and by using direct push technology, which is the geoprobes out of Salina, Kansas, that's where they made geoprobes. They do a direct push technology that measures all these parameters in the subsurface. I won't go into the details, but can also take discrete samples on the way down or the way back up, either soil or groundwater. You run those through the lab on site, and you're getting the results as close as you can in real time. The way we used to do it is you'd sample all this soil, you'd send it off to a lab, you'd wait 30 days till you got the results, and you found out you were looking in all the wrong areas. I mean, it did happen. It happened a lot. Or you looked in all the right areas, or you didn't get it far enough downstream, down gradient or up gradient. Lord only knows which. We look for that stuff 60 ways to Sunday, but now the economic proposition of HRSC, high resolution site characterization, it's the model for the future. The EPA's put out great documents on best practices in this. And if you're going to go into environmental, you have to belong to you just get on their emailing list, a group called ITRC, the Interstate Technical Regulatory gobbledygook. It's all the state regulators. It's how they talk to each other. And it's what they're doing in New Jersey. Somebody in Arizona wants to know what they're doing. Or in Florida, they want to know what they're doing in Washington State. And so it's on everything. It's on radon, metals, you name it. They cover the entire waterfront of environmental issues. It's a great organization. They put out top-notch documents. Everything's free. Everything's free. Your tax dollars at work. So it's a real, if you're going to be environmental, and that's where all the late breaking, the newly developed things are coming out. If you're going to go into groundwater, Jim Jacobs is already on this. The people up at Waterloo and Colorado School of Mines, they've got this big groundwater project where they're bringing out all these really best practices books, downloadable ebooks. They're all free. It's called the Groundwater Project. Great documents put out by top-notch people, super, super capable. And Steve had alluded to this before, UAVs, drones, unmanned aerial vehicles. One thing that's kind of a cheap alternative, or can put a kind of an interesting twist in your career, is if you got an FAA license to fly a drone. It's not that expensive. It's the ground school. They're not going to put you in the cockpit of anything. It's a class. You sit through a class. I've known 2 people that took it. One was a female metallurgist, and the other person was a soil scientist. And they were both FAA licensed pilots. And they just tell you can't fly it around schools, airports, electrical power line, and line of sight is how you operate these things if you're going to be compensated for that commercially. But it's a great thing to know. It's a great tool to have in your toolbox, in your skill set, in your value proposition if you have that capability. And I guess there's going to be a workshop on that, right, Steve, is what you said? Okay, so on the mining side, if you're going to go into economic geology, well, no, I say mining right off the bat, but it's really diversifying. Everybody, you think of Nevada, you think gold, silver, Arizona, copper, Mexico, silver, but it's changing, and it's changing really quick. One thing that's coming around big time is lithium. And it's not just lithium out of brines and evaporites. It's lithium now in the Clayton Valley that's in marls. And they're also getting it out of spodumene pegmatites. That's changing very quickly because we're going to run into a real bottleneck on the national and international. Most of it comes from South America, but out of Chile, but lithium supplies. It's as we speak right now, it's going crazy in Nevada with lithium. The other one is strategic metals. This is something that's kind of near and dear to my heart because I spent a little bit of time in vanadium, but vanadium, uranium, cobalt, nickel, cadmium, chromium. The markets for those are only going to increase as we go to EVs and we electrify our future, right? That's just where it's going to go. The other thing that's attached to that is rare earth elements. They're neither rare. They will be in the future though, because we only have one mine in the U.S. for those. And that's Mountain Pass, which is right on the California-Nevada state line, right north of I-15. If you drive from LA up to Vegas, you go right by it. That's the only mine in the country producing it right now. And there's only one mill in the country that can refine those. And that's the White Mesa Mill in Blanding, Utah, that processes both uranium and vanadium. And they just announced last week they're going to start processing rare earth elements. It's the only one in the nation. 95+% of rare earth elements, which are critical to our infrastructure, communication, national defense, et cetera, 95% that comes out of China. And our relationships with China, and if you've been reading anything lately, they're not improving. So now if you're going into any of these, apart from GIS, which I think is kind of a baseline mapping skill that you should understand, you should know how to operate a GPS. If you don't know how to operate a GPS, they're actually kind of fun. They're kind of revelatory because sometimes you're not where you think you are. If you really want to get good with the GPS, you can use a cheap one and experiment no matter where you are with geocaching. If you've never done geocaching before, look into it. It's a great way to get very, very familiar with your GPS because that's how you navigate to a point. And there's a whole subculture around geocaching that's kind of strange. Both my kids did it and they said, oh, it's kind of cool. But it's a great way to learn navigation, real time, real world. And you can do it right in the city, out in the country. These geocaches, there's thousands of them all over the country. I won't explain it anymore. Just Google it up and have some fun with it if you want. But there are certain software packages out there that are kind of ubiquitous in the industries. So like if you're going into groundwater, it'd be really good to know ModFlow. And then there's a couple that VFlow, that's the finite element piece, or FreakQC and some other pieces that tie into that. I kind of got really familiar with Octasolve, which was the aquifer testing solution software that I've used. And that's kind of on the groundwater side. On the mining side, things are really evolving quite quickly when it comes to modeling deposits. And I'll explain how this has come about. It used to be, if you're going to define a three-dimensional body in space, the way you would do that is you create a whole series of cross sections that all parallel each other, and then at right angles a whole nother series of cross sections, and then you kind of interpolate between all those right angle fixtures, like we used to call it the big egg curtain, to see what the ore body looks like, or what the subsurface, whatever it is, your target body looks like. Well, the new way of modeling is you just take all your drill results and you model those drill sticks and put only that information into your model, and you model them implicitly. And you would develop it almost like X-ray vision. In fact, it came out of tomography. You develop kind of an X-ray vision to see through your low concentration outlying values into your higher concentration structurally controlled values, what your ore body morphology actually looks like. The big innovator there was a software called Leapfrog. And Leapfrog has been, it's just swept through the industry. Leapfrog got so popular, another company called Sequent bought them last year, I think. Then last week, the company stepped in and bought Sequent, and they're called Bentley. But my understanding is Leapfrog is one of those software packages that will most quickly lead you to the wrong answer. But a lot of people use it quite reliably and really like working with it, and it's great. Just got really great intrinsic values. So that's it on the software front. Oh, when it comes for looking for jobs, Mark had talked about LinkedIn. I'm all in on LinkedIn, but there's so many other things that are out there that really get overlooked, and I'll run a few of these by you. He mentioned Indeed.com. Indeed's got to be number 2. It's uber popular. You hear about ZipRecruiter, it's on the radio all the time. ZipRecruiter. Career Mine. If you're going into mining or economic geology, Career Mine is a very good one. And there's a whole bunch of associations and organizations, whether it's the State Geologic Society. I like the Geologic Society in Nevada. I'm very big on the Groundwater Resources Association of California, GRAC, Rocky Mountain Association of Geologists. If you're looking for employment in the federal sector, no matter who it is, whether it's U.S. Fish and Wildlife, USGS, Bureau of Land Management, you name it, those are all listed on USA Jobs. And the thing is, with each one of these, you don't have to go looking. You just set up an alert. And in fact, we just went through this. A guy from our last group call, that fellow that was in Michigan, did find a job in Arizona. He was looking for a job in Arizona. Put up a search, entry-level geology job, Arizona. And just every time one pops up, it sends it to him. It's an alert. You don't even have to go looking. It comes to you. You just set it up. And you can do it environmental, you can do it groundwater, you can do it geology. I only want to work in West Texas. I only want to work in Ventura County. I only want to work wherever. You set up that alert and it comes to you. Within each one of these different portals, if you will. So you can set it up within Indeed.com or ZipRecruiter. And notice who's not in this list anymore. And they were huge. And not that long ago, Monster. They were the monster. They were the prototype for this. And it shows you how rapidly this whole industry has evolved. Because at one time, Monster spent half of their entire capital on a 30-second advertisement for a Super Bowl halftime advertisement. And they like quadrupled the size of their company inside of something like 6 months. They're not even on the board anymore. I don't know what happened to Monster. I don't know if anybody who advertises or uses Monster anymore. But those are some of the big ones. But different associations, AIPG, we post stuff all the time. AAPG, they post stuff all the time. I don't track AGI or GSA or some of those other groups, so I can't really speak to those. But the thing that, I mean, the whole underlying purpose of this whole call is you need to understand, hopefully, we want all of you fully employed. Everybody who can hear my voice, I want you to be a gainfully employed geologist, geochemist, geophysicist, whatever you want to be in the earth science. We want to have you fully employed doing that successfully. So that's kind of the mission, if you will. That's why we do this. I wish when I had been an undergrad, or even when I was in grad school, I talked to my professors when I was getting out of school. And I said, well, surely you must have some links to industry of people I could contact or could talk to or should talk to. And they're like, no, I don't. No, this is what I do. I teach. I don't. And that was a shocker, not just for me, a whole bunch of my cohort. No ties to industry, not really wired in, not really. And it was. I'd really hoped that I was somehow going to get some leverage out of those relationships. They didn't exist. But you can do that with your peer group. And you can do that by keeping in touch with everybody as you go along the curve, or your colleagues and classmates, whatever, contact you, 2 years, 3 years, 5, 10 years out, and you want to hear what they're doing. You want to know what they're doing. And part of the reason you want to know that, it's very economic. You want to know where you are and what your value is in the marketplace. Don't be blind to that. You're going to be a little bit more in the Bay Area than you're going to be in West Texas or Tucson. But you want to know what your value is. Like, I'm a 3 to 5 year person. Am I a 50K person, or am I getting to like a 60 or 70K person, maybe 75K? You want to know that, and you want to keep that in the back of your mind. It's like keeping your credit score. Where am I in this dynamic? What am I worth, really? And that's what you want to know. What am I worth? And it's very pragmatic, but you need to know that, and just keep that in the back of your mind, where the market is. That's kind of difficult information to discern. And a lot of times when they post this stuff on LinkedIn or Indeed, pays this range, 3 to 5 year geologist living in Topeka, this is what they make. Well, I don't think that's wholly reliable data, but it provides you some reference points. Sometimes I've been shocked to see what people make in California, but not always. You know, it's just one of those things that I don't know. It goes with your skill set, and the greater the value proposition, the greater skill and capability that you bring to the equation, the more you'll be compensated, and rightly so, because you put more time and energy and care and grooming into your career. It's just that's what you reap from that, and you'll end up getting better work, better assignments, better exposure, maybe better language skills in another language, that kind of stuff. But I would wish every one of you, I mean, my career's been all over the charts, but I would wish you every bit as much fun and adventure and neat stuff as I've had. I've been so lucky. I've seen stuff that just absolutely mind blowing. I mean, holy smokes, really neat stuff that I would have never ever run into before. Or if I just stayed in the same thing, doing the same thing, I'm not wired that way. And Ed and I were just talking last week. A lot of scientists aren't. You know, we want to do different things and grow, you know, personally and professionally. And so that's what comes with that. But I think Steve, that's all my chattering points on everything that I was going to go through. Yeah, that's everything.
You brought up an incredible number of good points. So I'm sure I noticed a lot of people were taking notes and smiling every so often. And so yeah, you've been heard. But you know, Matt is our president-elect, and he's very reachable. So use this resource. He's been alluding to it, but it's this whole thing's about relationships that you want to develop as you move along, which then develops your own professional position in life. So Matt, I appreciate all your comments that you made today. You added a few things that we haven't really said in the past. I did want to ask you though, how did your job experiences prepare you to become the state geologist in New Mexico? New Mexico, right? Yeah.
Yeah, it was odd because the position came up and I saw the posting and I wasn't interested. And then it came up like 2 years later. And some people that I knew in the Colorado State Survey contacted me and said, hey, you know what, you ought to look into that. And I said, well, what's going on down there? They can't find the right person and some friends made some calls for me, and I contacted the predecessor to the predecessor about the job. He was a personal friend of Bill Shook, who's our past executive director of AIPG. Bill put me in touch with him, and I picked his brain. He wasn't on the search committee, and they had 78 applicants for that job. And the reason I made it to the short list of 3 was I was nothing like any of the other candidates. They didn't have commercial experience. They were actually coming from other state geologic surveys. One was coming out of Illinois and one was coming out of Michigan, I think. And they really wanted to diversify the mix. The president of the university at that time wanted to diversify the mix, but he let me know, hey, I'm retiring in a year and a half. So after a year and a half, we don't know what's going to happen here. I went, that's okay. I'll take that leverage bet. So yeah, I moved down to Socorro, and that's one of the biggest state geologic surveys in the West. They got 68 employees, 64 in Socorro and 4 up in Albuquerque, right across the school from the university there. Great experience. Dream job. I'd still be there today if I was still dreaming. But they brought in a whole new management structure with the changing of the presidency and the CFO, the COO, the Dean of Students Affairs. Everybody kind of went out the door en masse, and they paid me to go away, essentially. And same thing with the uranium or vanadium thing. We were very successful, hoping to prove that up. Great project, dream project. But our neighbors bought us out and paid us to go away. So it was one of those, it wasn't a failure. It was a complete outrageous success. It was just short-lived.
So it sounds like your success in getting into that position though was you're very diversified in your experiences.
Oh yeah.
And that really won that over that. That's what got you in, aside for that over the top great personality, you know.
Well, I'll tell you one thing that turned out kind of strange on that was about, I remember it was August 5th. It was about a month and a half into that job was when they had the Gold King mine spill outside of Silverton, Uray. And that came right down the Animas River, right through Durango, right into New Mexico. And Lee Allison, who was the state geologist in Arizona, he put 5 people on that right away, sent them right up there on the river, sampling, doing all this stuff. We put 11 people up there with no budget, none whatsoever. We got 11 people going. We were going to set up a field station in Farmington, but we wrangled a deal out of that where we started the quarterly sampling from the New Mexico DEP because they didn't put boots on the ground, but that's what we did. Quarterly sampling, everything, all the alluvial wells, there's 68 different ways to sample that stuff, but really, really cool study, still going as we speak. It also to support the litigation between New Mexico, Colorado, and EPA Region 6. So that's what we were in the mix on with that. But it was also $250,000 to our bottom line. So we were very happy to win that work. It was kind of a mixed blessing. It's all come and gone. I don't know what the long-term lasting effects are, metals loading like that, but that's something that just happened right out of the chute. And we just responded and somehow found the budget for that.
Yeah, well, you developed a good strategy to win that over. Hey, want to open this up to some of the students asking you questions or comments?
Oh, yeah,
so, hey, guys, just speak up. Anybody?
Okay, that about wraps it up. That's good to hear.
Hey, one last thing. What's the name of that book again that you said is a definite book that everybody should have?
The Geoscience Handbook 2016, AGI. Got to have it.
Geoscience Handbook 2016. Okay.
Yeah, it's the 5th edition. I've actually got several precursor editions. Here's the fourth edition. But you got to have it. And I don't work for GSI or AGI. I'm not compensated by them. I don't just willy-nilly plug their stuff, but you got to have it. You absolutely got to have it. If you're going to be a geologist, you got to have that book. Period.
Do any of you students have it right now? Does anybody have this book?
See, talk about value add.
Yeah.
I've been out of Socorro since 1976, and I never even heard of the geoscience handbook.
Huh. Well, we learn something new every day.
Yeah.
That's right. That's right.
I may have come across it.
Well,
I may have come across it, but just blew it away.
one last question. If somebody wants to look for some really good geology free training on the net, where would you suggest they look? I mean, Goalie is something we're associated with. That's
yeah. There's so many places. Well, I mentioned like the groundwater project. If you're going into groundwater with all the stuff that I always say freeze and cherry. The groundwater folks and Eileen Potter and all those folks have put together. That's a whole stack of ebooks. That's great for groundwater. There's an awful lot of webinars that you can play again and again and again relative to economic geology. And that was actually put on by students from Ireland, of all things. It's called Ore Deposits Hub, just like it sounds, Ore Deposits Hub. They have another one that's called Geo Hub, HUG, and those are really good webinars. Oh man. GSN puts on very good presentations and webinars that you can pull up again. And I always do that and play them back because I stop them and start them and take notes. And I finally find a 45-minute presentation takes me 3 hours to get all the way through. But it allows me to take much more thorough notes. But the one thing I've been looking at is MOOCs, massive open online courses. I took one through Stanford a couple of years ago on mechanical properties, basically of unconventional reservoirs. The instructor is a guy named Mark Zoback, Z-O-B-A-C-K. And that comes up as a free MOOC, like twice a year. it was kind of an odd one, but wow, I, re- I learned a lot from that one. I sponsored a study group down in Socorro on that. I bought them all the books if they would take the class with me and help me through it. It was a great strategy. I bought all the pizza too, so that strategy worked. But there's just a wealth of stuff, much more so than there even was 2 years ago. There's so much stuff that's free out there.
That's right. I guess we just have to continue surfing the net, and we will
Oh
find
gosh,
these-
yeah. Oh yeah.
and talk to other people, and get some leads on where to
Right.
look.
Right.
Anybody else have questions? Maybe Laxman, you're still there. Maybe you have a question.
You've got 2 people with their hands up, Steve.
Okay, I don't have access to any of that. So
Top left
whoever
of
has
your-
their hand,
Top left of the screen. Click on Armstrong and Roger.
Hey, yeah, I guess I'll go. So my name's Brooke, and I'm currently a graduating senior at UC Santa Barbara, and I wanted to know if you guys know anything about like the GIT, because I was planning on taking it October 1st in Sacramento, but I just found out that the finalizing date to like submit your application is May 1st, but you can't take the GIT unless all of your coursework is completed by the finalizing date. But I'm not going to graduate till June because I'm quarter system. So I'm like denied from taking that exam, even though by the time I take it in October, I would have had all the coursework done.
I wish I had a very good answer for you on that, but I will tell you who does. There's a woman in Sacramento, and she's going to be presenting, Lori Rocca, RACCA, and she's the walking, talking encyclopedia on all matters related to testing on this. She really, really knows her stuff. We're kind of dialed into her because she's really dialed into ASBON, and you can find her quite easily. She's right there on whatever that is, Capitol Oaks Drive or whatever that's called in Sacramento. But Lori will have that answer. And I see you're kind of in a middle spot for the GIT, but you're smart to take it as soon as you wrap things up while things are still fresh in your head. I didn't do that. I was out 5 years before I took it, and I didn't have the power of recollection, honestly, and I really had to work at it. But if you can take the GIT sooner rather than later, then it'll just come that much more easily to you.
So Brooke, Lori Rocca is going to be in another Zoom meeting that we're having on April 29th. So get that on your calendar. Okay.
Yeah, she's super knowledgeable.
Yeah. Mark, did you also have something to ask or say?
Yeah, I was going to mention to the group that I met with the USGS mapping and data preservation group yesterday via MS Teams for about 5 hours. And I sit on a federal advisory committee for the USGS. And one thing that came out of the meeting that I wanted to share with the students is that the USGS, National Science Foundation, and a couple other Department of Interior agencies are combining their assets into what they call NIBI, which is a borehole depository for the entire contiguous and Alaska states. And so they are looking for 3D modeling expertise to help them on compiling this database. And so if you have 3D modeling skills coming out of college, there's your ticket regards to writing up a good resume, either in the private industry or the government. So just keep in mind 3D modeling skills for groundwater as well as for soil and rock formations.
Thanks, Mark. This is another example of how important the AIPG is. We help network and help you guys get into, get these leads to find jobs. So yeah, Mark, appreciate you being so deeply involved in these things with you at USGS, but you're involved in many other things too. So, hey, any other questions, comments from anybody?
I'm actually moving to Midtown Sacramento in June, and I heard that that's where like a lot of the state jobs are for environmental engineering. Is that true? Like the USGS or something? I have no idea where to start like applying because I've been, doing academics for years.
Well, the USGS is right off of Highway 50, very close to where you're going to live. And then the California Department of Water Resources seems to be looking for people from time to time as well. The Sustainable Groundwater Management Act has created opportunities for young and old, coming in to help manage the Central Valley and some of the other high-risk areas. So those will be 2 places. Anybody else know of any other melting pots of new work?
How
No,
about
I will
Pio,
say
Nevada?
though,
Don, what did you say?
Well, I'm going to be out working in Pios, Nevada, if that's of any interest.
Okay.
That's a little garden spot.
Oh, it is. It is the Overland Hotel. Highly recommend.
Well, Brooke, remember in October at the national conference, we're going to have a lot of people in the same room from Sacramento and all the other areas surrounding it, hopefully a pretty wide radius. So if you're still looking around at that point, you'll be making a lot of contacts.
yeah, Steve, I do want to say Shane Edmonds, who's speaking May 20th, he's Department of Water Resources, and he is part of a group hiring people this year and next year. He would be a great person to hear speak, get to know.
Okay, you want to
He's
write
out of
that in?
Placerville.
Write that in the chat. That information. Could you put it in the chat? And that way it'll be available to everybody, including you, Brooke.
Hey, Steve, I
Yes.
also wanted to add that Chevron is investing about $100 million into some geothermal exploration work north of Reno in California. So that would be another opportunity for students that want to get some valuable field work by going that direction there. So just to keep that in mind.
Would that be in Sierraville?
It starts with a W. The field starts with a W, and I don't have it in front of me, but it's like Wilder or Weidman or Weissman.
I'll have to look on the map. I'm not
Must
sure.
be up by Susanville somewhere.
By Susanville? Okay.
Yeah, it's pretty close to state line.
Yeah.
Mhm. All right. Any other comments?
Well, I also know that there's a lot of hydrologic work being done by the mines in north central Nevada, both under the, by Barrick Gold as well as Newmont and their combined efforts. They're really developing an entire water model for the upper Humboldt River, if that's of any interest to any students.
All right. Go ahead. I was just looking at the time. It's 12:40. We've had an excellent session. Hey, Matt, thanks a lot. I appreciate
Thank you for your time. I appreciate
not
it
only the
very much.
information, but how you presented it. This was great. Well, let's all remember next time we come together will be April 29th for Lori Rocca. We'll be learning specifics on how to get that credential. So chime in then, and then put something on your calendars for May 20th as well, where you can talk to some of the other recently graduating students who have found employment, and they'll share their stories and tricks of the trade to find good jobs. Okay. And as far as my rock solid team of people at UC Davis that are helping me out with the conference, we will see each other once again. All right, sometime soon here. So thank you, everybody. Kathy, thanks for staying with us all this time, although you were probably at least doing something enjoyable earlier on. And we will be reconnecting at the end of the month. Okay,
Thank you,
everybody.
Steve.
Yeah, thank you all. Thank
All
you
right,
very
and
much.
Ed, I'll be contacting you. Okay.
Nice job.
See you later, everybody.
Take care.
Adios.
Thank you. Thank you, Matt.
Thanks, Mark.